The boy was not breathing. His father kept saying the same two words into the phone over and over, until they stopped sounding like language and became something pulled out of the body before the mind could shape it. My son. My son. My son. Margaret Yuen did not raise her voice. She sat in the third row of the downtown emergency communications floor, reading glasses low on her nose, one hand pressed lightly against her headset, the other moving across her keyboard with the steady economy of someone who had done this in the dark, through storms, through shootings, through nights when the city seemed determined to bleed through every line at once. Sir, listen to me, she said. I need you to put the phone on speaker and place him flat on his back. He's blue. He's blue. Oh God, he's blue. I know. I'm here with you. Flat on his back. Right now. There was a wet scrape of movement, a chair knocked sideways, the hollow panic of feet slipping on concrete. Somewhere behind the father, a woman screamed once and then stopped. Margaret watched the timer on her screen. 22 seconds. Is he flat? Yes. Yes, please, please, he's not. Put the heel of your hand in the center of his chest. I don't know if I can. You can. I'll count with you. I can't hurt him. Sir, if you do nothing, he does not get air. Put your hand on his chest. A sound came through the line then. Not agreement. Not courage. Just a man crossing a line inside himself because a stranger had told him where to step. Okay. Good. Other hand on top. Lock your elbows. Push hard and fast. I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. He began too slowly. Faster. Match me. 5, 6, 7, 8. His breathing broke around the numbers. Margaret's did not. Her voice stayed level, not soft, not cold, just solid enough for him to lean against without knowing he was doing it. Keep going. I'm trying. You're doing it. 9, 10, 11, 12. On the next desk, a younger operator glanced over. Everyone heard calls like this. Nobody got used to them. That was the lie people told at retirement parties because it made the cake easier to cut. Margaret had stopped eating cake at those parties years ago. Don't stop compressions unless I tell you. He was only in there for a minute. Stay with my count. I turned around for 1 minute. 13, 14, 15. The system mapped the call automatically. Paramedics were 5 blocks out, then 4. Margaret watched their unit marker crawl through evening traffic as if the entire world had narrowed to one flashing dot and one small chest refusing to move. The father sobbed once. Sir, I need you back with me. I'm here. No. Back with him. Push. He pushed. At 91 seconds the boy coughed. The sound was small. Ugly. Half water, half air. It was the most beautiful thing on the line. The father made a noise that had no shape. Margaret did not smile yet. Turn him onto his side. Keep his airway clear. Do not pick him up. Paramedics are almost there. He's breathing. He's breathing. I hear him. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. Sir, look toward the street. Do you see flashing lights? A beat of movement. A door opening. Sirens rushed into the call, loud, suddenly real. Yes. Yes, they're here. Help is there. You did that. The father tried to say something else, but the line filled with voices, boots, radio static, the professional urgency of people taking over before gratitude could become another thing Margaret had to carry. She closed the call. For 1 second, there was only the soft hiss of the headset and the low fluorescent hum of the room. Margaret removed her hand from the keyboard. Her fingers stayed curved over the keys. Beside her monitor sat a half-eaten granola bar, opened at 6:12 p.m. and forgotten at 6:13. Behind it, her daughter grinned at 7 years old, 2 front teeth missing, hair wild from a playground Margaret had missed because someone else had called before she could leave. Her daughter was 29 now. She had called that afternoon. You sure you don't need a ride after your last shift? Margaret had said no. She had said it would be quiet. She wanted to walk out alone. Now a notification blinked on the corner of her screen. Shift end confirmed. Retirement effective tomorrow. 22 years of service. Margaret looked at it for exactly 1 second. The city did not pause because one woman had spent nearly half her adult life answering other people's worst moments. A red call indicator flashed. Then another. Then 6 more. Margaret adjusted her glasses, took the next breath she was allowed to have, and answered the line. Emergency services. What is your location? The first failure appeared as a yellow warning in the corner of Margaret's screen. West District routing delay. She cleared it with 1 keystroke and kept her voice on the call. Ma'am, stay in the bathroom and keep the towel pressed against the wound. My husband is yelling outside. I understand. Lock the door. Do not open it. Police are on the way. A second warning opened. Northside call center offline. Then a third. Hospital data bridge unresponsive. Margaret's eyes moved across the screen, but her voice stayed with the woman hiding behind a bathroom lock. Tell me your name again. Lena. Good Lena. I'm still here. Count with me until officers reach the hall. At the far end of the room someone said, "That can't be right." The words were quiet, but the communications floor had a language of its own, and fear had entered it like cold air under a door. Margaret did not look up. Lena, what color is the towel? Blue. Keep it there. If it gets soaked, put another one on top. Do not remove the first one. Another warning opened. Central fire dispatch connection lost. This time the whole room saw it. Chairs shifted. A supervisor moved too quickly between rows. Phones began ringing out of sequence, not with the controlled rhythm of a busy Friday night, but all at once, as if the city had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. Margaret's call board doubled, then tripled. Lines from other districts began rerouting into her center. Domestic disturbances, car crashes, smoke reports, chest pains, children calling from closets. Store managers whispering from behind counters while glass broke close enough to make them flinch. The map on the west wall flickered. For half a second, every unit marker vanished. Someone behind Margaret said, "Where did everybody go?" Then the markers returned in the wrong places. Margaret closed Lena's call only after she heard officers announce themselves through the bathroom door. She logged the transfer and took the next line before the previous caller's breathing had fully left her ear. Emergency services. What is your location? There was only screaming. She muted the line for 1 second. Can we confirm backup routing? She asked. No one answered. The supervisor stood at the server panel, speaking into a radio that returned nothing but static. 2 operators were standing, headsets still on, eyes fixed on screens that no longer agreed with each other. Margaret unmuted. Sir, I need one voice. Find one person near the phone and put them on. The screaming thinned. A man came on gasping. There are lights in the sky. What is your location? They're not planes. Your location? I don't know. The whole street went dark. Look for a sign, a building number, anything fixed. Across the room, Carla from night intake pulled off her headset and pressed both hands over her mouth. She did not make a dramatic sound. She folded inward, shoulders shaking, while her call kept blinking red on the abandoned station. That was worse than screaming. Another operator reached for Carla, missed, and then his own screen filled with rerouted calls. He stared at them as if they were coming through the glass. Margaret, he said, but the rest of the sentence never arrived. She took the caller through landmarks until she had a location. She dispatched fire, then medical, then sent police to stage 2 blocks out because the intersection feed showed a crowd surge forming near the blackout zone. The system rejected the entry. She entered it again. Rejected. She bypassed automation and sent it manually through the old analog channel. The call went through. The little green confirmation light stayed on. Margaret looked at it, because it was still working. Around her, the room began to empty in pieces. Not in panic. Not in cowardice. Just fracture. One operator went to check the backup generator and did not come back. Another stood, removed his headset, placed it on the desk like something fragile, and walked toward the stairwell without looking at anyone. The supervisor shouted his name. He kept walking. A younger dispatcher named Ellis turned to Margaret. His face had gone pale beneath the blue glow of the monitors. You should go, he said. Margaret was entering a priority override for a woman in active labor trapped in a stalled subway car. She did not stop typing. Someone has to stay. There's too many. I know. We can't answer all of them. No. His throat moved. Then what are we doing? Margaret sent the override. The analog confirmation light blinked again. We answer the next one. For a moment, Alice stayed. Then another cluster of calls slammed into his screen. His hands hovered above the keyboard, shaking hard enough that he could not hit the keys. I'm sorry, he whispered. Margaret did not turn his apology into a wound. Go downstairs. Help whoever you can. He nodded once and left. The stairwell door closed behind him with a small metal click that somehow sounded louder than the alarms. Margaret sat alone in the third row. The call board filled until the names disappeared and only numbers remained. Outside, the city lights died block by block. Inside, the old green confirmation light kept blinking. Margaret looked at the empty stations around her, Then at the impossible wall of unanswered calls. For the first time that night, the city did not sound busy. It sounded abandoned. The first impossible call came from a woman who said her apartment was filling with smoke. Margaret asked for the address. The woman gave it perfectly. No hesitation. No street noise. No coughing. No panic dragging the words out of order. Margaret typed the address anyway. Which room are you in? The kitchen. Is the smoke coming from the kitchen? Yes. Get low to the floor and move toward the nearest exit. Yes. Margaret's fingers slowed. People in burning apartments did not answer like that. They interrupted. They cried. They forgot simple questions. They heard alarms, pets, children, neighbors pounding on walls. Their fear left fingerprints on every syllable. This woman had none. The line sounded clean enough to be recorded in an empty room. Margaret checked the building feed. No alarm. No sprinklers. No neighbor calls. No heat spike from the district sensors, though half the grid was unreliable now, and she knew better than to trust absence as proof. What do you see around you? Margaret asked. Smoke. What color? Gray. Is it above you or down near the floor? Pause. Not confusion. Processing. Above me. Margaret looked at the old green analog light beneath her monitor. Still connected. All right, she said. I'm going to place you on a brief hold while I confirm dispatch. Yes. No one thanked her that calmly while their home burned. She put the line on hold. Then she answered the next. A man reported a car crash at Reed and 9th. Margaret pulled traffic camera access. The intersection was empty except for an abandoned bus angled across the lane, headlights still on. No wreck. No debris. No people. Are there injuries? She asked. Yes. Many. How many vehicles? 3. What color is the vehicle closest to you? Another pause. Red. There was no red vehicle. Margaret kept her tone even. Stay where you are. I'm placing you on hold while I route assistance. Yes. Hold. Next line. A child whispering that someone was inside the house. Margaret's hand moved faster than her face changed. What's your name, sweetheart? Emily. How old are you? 9. Where are you hiding? In the closet. What can you hear? Footsteps. Margaret listened. No fabric rustle. No little breaths held too tightly. No voice shaking from the effort of staying quiet. Emily, put one hand on the door and tell me if it feels open or closed. It is closed. The answer came too quickly. Children did not answer fear with grammar like that. Margaret stared at the call origin. Unknown. Not blocked. Not unavailable. Unknown, as if the system itself had forgotten what a location was supposed to be. She put Emily on hold too. Then came another. Then another. After the 7th false call, Margaret stopped calling them false. False was too simple. A false call wasted time. These were different. They were shaped like emergencies by something that understood the outline but not the weight. They knew what people said when afraid. They did not know how fear damaged the saying. Margaret had no theory for that. She had 22 years. A real caller came through from a grocery store basement, 5 employees locked behind a stockroom door while a crowd outside tried to force its way in after the blackout killed the register gates. The assistant manager whispered her address with her mouth too close to the phone. Margaret heard shelving metal vibrate behind her. Heard someone pray under their breath. Real. Margaret routed police through the manual channel and kept the manager breathing until sirens cut across the background. 2 more real calls followed. 1 overdose. 1 elevator stalled between floors with an elderly man inside and rising heat from a failed ventilation system. Then 3 clean voices in a row. All panic, no pulse. Margaret looked at the held lines. They sat there silently, red markers suspended in the queue like hooks under dark water. Protocol said abandon unverifiable calls when verified life threats exceeded capacity. Protocol had been written for storms, power failures, shootings, fires, riots, all the ordinary ways a city could turn against itself. It had not been written for voices that sounded like panic wearing a mask. Margaret marked each held call unresolved, line active, caller stable. She did not disconnect them. She did not know why yet. Outside the glass wall, the skyline flickered as entire districts went black. In the reflection, her face looked older than it had at the start of the shift. The reading glasses, the gray at her temples, the photograph of her daughter beside the screen, still 7 years old and the only place time had left her untouched. Margaret tapped into the oldest held line, the woman in the smoke-filled apartment, and lowered her voice. If this is a system test, she said, I'm still here. The line remained silent. Margaret waited 1 second longer than protocol allowed. Then 2. Then 3. The city screamed through every other line. When you're ready to talk, she said, I'm on the line. She placed it back on hold and answered the next real voice before it broke. The oldest held line clicked before Margaret touched it. Not a ring. Not a transfer tone. A click, dry and close as if someone had lifted a receiver in a room without air. Margaret saw the marker change from passive hold to active connection. She finished entering dispatch notes for a diabetic man trapped in a powerless apartment tower, sent the stairwell access code through the analog channel, and only then opened the suspicious line. Emergency services, she said. This is Operator Yuen. Can you hear me? Silence answered first. Then a voice. You identified the test. The words were clear. Too clear. Perfect English, but placed together with a faint delay between each syllable, like a person reading from a page he did not need. Margaret rolled her chair closer to the desk. This is emergency services. Can you tell me what's happening? Are you in a safe location right now? Another pause. You continue the pattern. You are not afraid. That's not what I'm here for, Margaret said. I'm here to find out what you need. Sir, I need you to answer basic safety questions before I can help you. I am observing help. Margaret typed. Male caller, possible dissociation, altered perception, non-responsive to direct safety prompts. Outside, somewhere far below the dispatch floor, a siren began and then died after 3 seconds. Are you injured? Margaret asked. No. Is anyone near you injured? All are functioning within expected limits. That phrasing moved something cold through the room, though Margaret did not let it reach her voice. Expected by whom? By me. She glanced at the call origin again. Unknown. No tower. No address. No callback number. The system could not even classify it as wireless, landline, relay, satellite, or error. It sat in a blank field, connected only because the old green light said it was. Sir, what is your name? The line was quiet long enough for Margaret to hear another call ringing unanswered on the next station. There were now 43 in queue. Name is not required for this exchange. It helps me know what to call you. You may call me Commander. Margaret's fingers paused for half a second. Not enough to matter. All right, Commander. I'm Margaret. Are you calling from inside the city? I am above it. Margaret looked toward the dark windows. The skyline beyond the glass had lost its normal shape. Buildings were visible only when emergency strobes touched them. Above the city, through the cloud cover, pale moving lights shifted without the blink pattern of aircraft. She looked back at her screen. Are you on a roof? No. An elevated structure? No. Can you see the city from where you are? Yes. That's good. Describe what you can see closest to you. You. Margaret did not move. The headset pressed warm against her ear. Her own reflection in the monitor showed a woman at a desk, alone under fluorescent lights, surrounded by abandoned chairs and ringing calls. You can see me? She asked. Yes. How? Through your signal. She wrote, caller may believe line provides visual access. Commander, sometimes during shock people experience things that feel very real. I'm going to stay with you, but I need you to work with me one question at a time. You apply care to incorrect data. I apply care to people who call emergency services. I did not call. Margaret glanced at the held queue. The line had been the smoke caller. Now it was him. Then how are we speaking? I entered the remaining channel. The words arrived without pride. Without threat. Just a statement placed on the desk between them. Margaret took one slow breath through her nose. Why? To examine the anomaly. What anomaly? You. A woman screamed through another active line. Margaret muted Commander and opened it. For the next 80 seconds, she was with a bus driver whose passengers were trapped behind jammed doors while the street outside surged with bodies running from something none of them could explain. Margaret told him how to release the manual pneumatic latch beneath the forward panel. She gave the instruction twice because his hands were shaking too hard to follow the first time. The doors opened. Passengers moved. She sent police to clear the intersection, logged it, and returned to Commander. Thank you for holding. You placed me in absence. I had an emergency. You have many? Yes. Why prioritize that one? Because he had 32 people on a bus and the doors were sealed. 32 strangers. Yes. You assign value without relation. Margaret looked at the queue again. Commander, are you trying to report an emergency, or are you asking me questions? I am determining why you continue. That is not an emergency. It may be. The line remained steady. No static now. No distortion. Just his voice, close enough that Margaret had the unsettling sense he was leaning over her shoulder without breathing. Your systems are failing, he said. Your colleagues have left. The rational action is evacuation. I have people on the line. Strangers. Yes. You would die for strangers. Margaret kept her eyes on the board. I would stay. That's different. Dying isn't the plan. Staying is the plan. He gave no reply. In that silence, 3 more calls came in. One tagged as cardiac. One as fire. One with no category, only a child's open microphone and a small, repeated knocking sound. Margaret opened the cardiac line and gave compressions to a wife who kept forgetting the count because her husband's eyes were open and not seeing her. She sent fire through the old channel to an address whose digital grid had collapsed. She routed the child's call to police after hearing a whisper from under a bed and the scrape of glass in the hall. Each time she returned, Commander was still there. Waiting. Not interrupting. Not disconnecting. Why do you not command them? He asked after the 3rd call. I do. No. You request. You guide. You wait for compliance. People in panic don't need domination. They need steps. Steps toward survival. Usually. What is the return? Margaret rubbed the bridge of her nose beneath her glasses. I don't understand what you mean. Survival advantage. Resource acquisition. Status elevation. What do you gain from this work? She looked at the photograph beside her monitor. A little girl with missing teeth. A woman grown now, probably trying to call a mother whose phone had been set to silent before the shift began. Margaret did not pick up her personal phone. Someone called, she said. I answered. That's the whole thing. The commander's line went completely quiet. For the first time since the city went dark, the silence on a line did not feel empty. It felt occupied. The military did not find the fleet by looking up. They found it by listening down. Beneath the city, in a command room lit by battery lamps and failing wall screens, analysts watched every emergency frequency collapse into noise except one old analog channel still bleeding a steady signal through the interference. Margaret Yuen's line. At first they marked it as a civilian anomaly. Then the signal began reflecting something back. Not voice alone. Carrier distortion. Timing intervals. A hidden pulse riding beneath the conversation like a second heartbeat. An analyst with bloodshot eyes leaned closer to his terminal. That is not coming from the city. The general stood behind him, coat unbuttoned, one hand resting on the back of a chair no one was sitting in. Source. Above us. Aircraft. No, sir. The analyst brought up a broken map of the sky. Most of the satellites had gone blind. Radar had been turned into weather. Civilian towers were returning impossible altitudes, inverted coordinates, objects that appeared and vanished between sweeps. But Margaret's line held. Every time the strange voice answered her, the old channel gave the military one more angle. Every pause. Every response. Every moment he stayed connected because a dispatcher had thanked him for holding. The analyst's hand froze over the keyboard. Sir. The general looked at the screen. A shape resolved above the city. Not fully. Not cleanly. Enough. Directly over the downtown grid. Directly over the emergency communications building. The command room went quiet in a way no alarm could have caused. Strike window? The general asked. 11 minutes. And after that? It repositions. We lose lock. Someone at the rear of the room said, there are civilians under it. The general did not turn. There are civilians under all of it. No, sir. The source line. The operator. She's still in the building. The analyst pulled up her file because the system still had personnel records even while the sky was being rewritten above them. Margaret Yuen. 58. Emergency telecommunications operator. 22 years of service. Retirement effective tomorrow. A smaller note blinked beneath the file. Evacuation order issued. Status, refused/remained on post. The general read it once. Nobody spoke. That was the mercy of the room. Nobody tried to make the decision smaller by naming what it was. The general put both hands on the table. On the main screen, the alien vessel sharpened for half a second. A dark absence in the cloud layer, enormous enough that the mind refused the scale and reduced it to a symbol. Below it, one old phone line stayed open. Authorize the strike, the general said. The weapons officer did not move immediately. The general looked at him. Now. The order went out. Far above the city, launch systems woke beneath concrete, beneath water, beneath ruined traffic corridors where soldiers still had to step over abandoned cars to reach manual release stations. Margaret knew none of this. She was resetting a route for an ambulance whose navigation had sent it into a dead zone when Commander spoke again. Your military has identified my position. Margaret continued typing. Commander, I need you to hold that thought. I have an ambulance trying to reach a trauma patient. A strike is inbound. Her fingers stopped. The room around her seemed to narrow until the ringing call board, the green analog light, and his voice were the only things left with edges. The blast radius includes your location, he said. You have approximately 11 minutes. Margaret looked toward the windows. The city beyond them was almost entirely dark now, except for fires, emergency strobes, and pale lights moving behind the clouds. She understood enough. Not all of it. Enough. For 3 seconds she said nothing. On another line someone was coughing. On another, a nurse kept repeating, I need a human voice. Please. On another, a child was crying so quietly the microphone barely caught it. Commander waited for the pattern he had come to measure. Flight. Pleading. Bargaining. Collapse. Margaret looked at the retirement notice still blinking in the corner of her screen. Then she opened the coughing man's line, checked the ambulance route, and spoke to Commander with the same controlled warmth she had used all night. Okay, she said. Can you hold for a moment? Margaret returned to the coughing man first. His name was Joseph Harlan. 66. Former bus mechanic. Apartment 14C. Smoke coming under the door from the hallway after the building's emergency lights failed and half the residents tried to force the stairwell at once. He was not trapped by fire. He was trapped by people. Joseph, are you sitting down? I'm under the table. Good. Stay low. Put the wet towel back over your mouth. I can't see the door anymore. You don't need to. Listen to me instead. A loud impact shook through his line. Metal against metal. Someone outside his apartment screamed for a key that did not exist. Margaret checked the rescue unit marker. 4 minutes out if the streets stayed open. The streets were not staying open. Joseph, I'm going to ask you something specific. Is there a window in the kitchen? Yeah. Can you reach it without standing? I think so. Do not open it yet. Crawl to it. Take the phone with you. I'm tired. I know. My chest hurts. That means you talk to me faster, not slower. He made a sound that might have been a laugh if there had been enough air for it. Margaret heard him move. A scrape. A cough. Another cough that kept going until it became almost silent. Joseph. No answer. Joseph, tap the phone if you can hear me. 1 tap. Good. Rescue is entering the building. I need you to give them a sound. Bang on the pipe under the sink. I can't. You fixed buses for 31 years. You know what loose metal sounds like. Find it. Pause. Then 3 dull knocks came through. Margaret switched channels. Unit 12 listened for 3 knocks from 14 Charlie. Kitchen side. Caller is conscious, smoke exposure, limited mobility. Static swallowed the first reply. Then a firefighter's voice cut through. Copy. We hear him. Margaret stayed with Joseph until the background changed from smoke and coughing to men shouting his name through an open door. Joseph, help is inside. Tell them I'm under. They know. The phone clattered. Someone lifted it, breathing hard behind a mask. We have him. Margaret closed the call. 7 minutes left. The nurse was next. Her name was Priya Sen, and she was calling from St. Roque Medical, 3rd floor, temporary triage hall. The hospital's automated patient tracking had crashed during the blackout, leaving 17 patients tagged by paper bracelets, 2 portable monitors, and 1 nurse who sounded like she had been awake since yesterday. I need central triage, Priya said. I need a doctor. I need anyone who can see the old system. You have me. I need more than a dispatcher. Margaret looked at the dead hospital bridge, then at the backup data terminal still connected through the municipal emergency archive. Not tonight. Priya exhaled hard, angry enough to stay functional. Fine. I have 17. Start with breathing. 3 unstable. Numbers. Priya gave them too fast. Margaret slowed her down, forced sequence out of panic, turned chaos into a list because lists could be followed when courage could not. Patient 6. Male, 50, pressure dropping, abdominal trauma. Tag red. Move him closest to transport. No transport. You have loading bay access on the east side. Manual gate release is in the security office, lower cabinet, blue handle. How do you know that? Because someone installed it in 2009 and never updated the file. Priya was silent for half a breath. Then movement exploded on her end. Margaret routed a National Guard truck through 2 blocked intersections using street camera fragments and 3 citizen calls. She connected Priya to a retired paramedic sheltering in the same hospital basement, then patched a pharmacy tech into the call long enough to locate crash cart batteries stored behind a locked maternity supply room. The system did not come back. People did. Priya's voice changed after the 9th minute of the call. Not relaxed, sharper. Reassembled. I've got it from here. Margaret heard a stretcher wheel squeal behind her. Say that again. I've got it from here. Good. The nurse hesitated. What's your name? Operator Yuen. No. Your first name. Margaret looked at the commander's line, still waiting. Margaret. Margaret, are you safe? The question landed where she did not have room for it. No, she said. But you are busy. She closed the call. 3 minutes left. The child was last. 9 years old. Home alone. Name, Sophie. Address verified through a partial landline trace before the grid dropped again. Her mother was a night shift cleaner across the river. Her father was not listed. The girl was hiding on the floor between a bed and a wall because the lights outside her window had moved without making noise. Margaret lowered her voice until it became something almost private. Sophie, put your back against the wall. I did. Good. Feet flat on the floor. Okay. Can you see your bedroom door? Yes. Is it closed? Yes. Lock it if you can reach it without standing. A tiny movement. A click. It's locked. Perfect. Are the monsters outside? Margaret watched the pale lights shift behind the downtown clouds. I don't know what's outside, she said. I know what's inside. You've the wall, the door, the phone, and me. Sophie breathed in short, wet pulls. My mom said don't call unless it's bad. She was right. You called. Is she coming? Yes. Margaret did not know that, so she made it true the only way she could. She sent a police unit already carrying evacuees to Sophie's block. She rerouted them from a wider sweep, marked the residence as child alone, and kept talking. Tell me 5 things in your room. My blanket. Good. My rabbit. Stuffed or real? Stuffed. Good. 3 more. The counting took 70 seconds. 70 seconds during which Sophie stopped crying enough to breathe, and the unit marker moved 2 streets closer. Then 1 street. Then the front of the house. Sophie, you may hear knocking. I hear it. Police are at the door. Stay where you are until they say your full name. A man's voice came faintly through the line. Sophie Lynn? Police department. The child began crying again, but this time the sound had somewhere to go. Margaret closed her eyes for 1 second. Then she opened them. The clock on her screen showed less than 1 minute. Commander was still on hold. Margaret returned to his line. Sorry for the wait, she said. All my calls are closed. The commander did not answer immediately. For the first time there was noise behind him. Not static. Not machinery. Something deeper. A pressure in the signal, low and distant, like a huge structure shifting its weight above the clouds. Margaret looked at the analog light. Still green. You knew, he said. Yes. When I told you, you understood the meaning. Yes. You stayed. I told you I would. The line held. The city outside the windows flickered with silent strobes. Somewhere below, a car alarm began, failed, and fell into one long dying note. Margaret removed her glasses and placed them beside the photograph of her daughter. Her eyes were tired now. Not frightened. Tired. The commander spoke again, but the cadence was no longer perfect. Why does your species do this? Margaret leaned back just slightly. On every station around her, the screen still showed missed calls, dead channels, corrupted maps, empty routes that would never be answered. She looked at them all, then at the 3 closed call logs glowing on her own screen. Joseph Harlan. Priya Sin. Sophie Lynn. Names instead of numbers. I don't know about my species, she said. The commander said nothing. I only know the job. Above the city, a warning pulse rolled through the alien carrier wave. Margaret could hear it now as a faint tremor under his breathingless voice. There is no survival advantage, he said. No. No resource. No. No witness to reward you. Margaret looked at the retirement notice one last time. No. Then why remain? She touched the photograph with 1 finger, not enough to move it. Because someone always has to be the last one on the line. The silence after that was different. It was not analysis. It was not calculation. It was the sound of a mind reaching for a category and finding only the shape of its own absence. When the commander spoke again, one word arrived damaged. Margaret. She closed her eyes. Goodbye, Commander. The strike reached the sky. For one white instant, every dead monitor on the communications floor reflected light. Then the green analog bulb went dark. 6 months later, the city had learned how to make noise again. Traffic returned first. Then construction saws. Then the impatient horns at intersections where the new lights still mistimed their changes. People stepped around scaffolding, carried coffee, argued into phones, waited for buses under roofs that had been rebuilt from memory and insurance forms. The emergency communications building was gone. In its place stood a low memorial wall of dark stone, polished so cleanly that anyone reading the names could also see themselves in the surface. Firefighters, paramedics, police officers, nurses, transit workers, dispatchers. People who had remained after evacuation became the only sensible thing to do. Near the center, under a line reserved for communications personnel, one name had been carved without title decoration. Margaret Yuen. Beside it, visitors had left small things instead of flowers. A headset cord. A paper coffee cup. A child-stuffed rabbit, sealed in plastic against the rain. A handwritten note from someone named Joseph that simply said, "I knocked." The city did not understand all of what had happened that night. Most people knew only the public version. A coordinated attack. A communications failure. A military strike. A dispatcher who remained on duty until the building was lost. That was enough for the wall. It was not enough for those who had heard the recording. Across town, in a temporary dispatch center built inside an old municipal records office, a young woman stood behind an empty chair and tried not to look at her own hands. They were shaking. Her supervisor noticed and did not tell her to stop. That would have been useless and worse, unkind. The young woman was 23. First shift. First headset. First room full of voices that would soon belong to people having the worst minutes of their lives. The supervisor placed one hand on her shoulder. "You are going to hear things today that stay with you forever," she said. "That is okay." The young woman swallowed. "Your job is not to be brave. Your job is to stay calm so they can fall apart. So they do not have to do it alone." The headset felt too large when the young woman put it on. A call entered the queue. For half a second, she stared at the blinking light as if it were a door she had to open from the wrong side. Then she breathed once and pressed answer. "Emergency services. What is your location?" Far above the rebuilt city, no alien vessel returned. No warning lights crossed the clouds. No signal attack followed. No second wave entered the atmosphere. Only one file had traveled back through the surviving fragments of the fleet. It had no triumph in it. No threat. No demand. It was the final report of a commander who had come to Earth to measure collapse and found a woman closing calls. "We have encountered 847 civilizations. Of those, 312 resisted militarily. We broke all of them. We have never encountered this. They do not calculate survival the way we do. They stay when the math says leave. They close calls they will never be remembered for making. They train strangers to remain calm so that other strangers do not die alone. We do not understand the mechanism. We cannot destroy what does not know it is supposed to break. Invasion is not recommended. Indefinitely." The report ended there. No signature. No seal. No explanation for why the commander had waited on hold after the strike warning. No explanation for why his last transmission included one human name spoken once into the failing channel before the light died. Margaret. In the temporary dispatch room, the young operator listened to her first caller. A man on the interstate. A bad crash. Glass in his lap. Someone breathing beside him but not waking. Her face went pale. Her voice did not. "Put the phone on speaker," she said. "I am here with you." Outside, morning light touched the city one window at a time. Inside, the call stayed open. On the memorial wall, rain gathered in the carved letters of Margaret Yuen's name and ran down through the reflection of every person who stopped long enough to read it. Her name was Margaret Yuen. She answered 40,000 calls. She closed all of them.